Welcome to today's video. We are diving deep into one of the most fascinating ideas from Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point concept called the stickiness factor, and how small changes can completely alter the behavior of people, messages, and even viruses. This is the seventh video of the series. If you are the first time on this video, you can watch the first six videos by clicking the playlist by the name of the tipping point. So let's begin with a real world case. The city of Baltimore in the 1990s, a disturbing rise in syphilis cases rocked the city, especially in its poorest neighborhoods. At first, syphilis was an acute infection there. People caught it, showed symptoms quickly, and got treated before they had a chance to infect many others. But something changed. Due to budget cutbacks, Baltimore's public health clinics began to reduce their services. The number of medical staff dropped, clinics ran out of medication, and the number of patient visits fell dramatically. And what was the result? People were not getting treated on time. The same disease that was once short lived and manageable now stuck around longer in people's bodies. It transformed from an acute illness to a chronic one, and this change gave the virus more time to spread from person to person. This seemingly small shift in the city's health infrastructure had huge consequences. The disease tipped, it exploded. But this is not just a story about Baltimore, it's a powerful illustration of a broader principle in epidemiology and social behavior. Epidemics can tip not only because a few influential people spread them, but also because something about the agent itself changes. Let's zoom out and talk about viruses. Take the flu, for example. At the beginning of winter, one strain of flu circulates, but by the end of the season, it's often a completely different strain. Viruses mutate, they evolve, and when they do, they can they can become more contagious, more readily. They can become more contagious, more deadly, or harder to treat. The most famous flu epidemic in history, the 1918 Spanish flu, started off mild. It was first spotted in the spring of that year, and doctors did not find it too alarming. But then something mysterious happened over the summer. The virus transformed, and in the following 6 months, it became one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, killing between 20 and 40 million people worldwide. Here is the key: nothing changed about how it was being spread. It was still passed through coughs, sneezes, and contact. What changed was the virus itself. It became far more lethal. And this brings us to HIV. Job Goldsmith, a Dutch AIDS researcher, argues that the same transformation occurred with the HIV virus. He focused his research on a specific illness, pneumo- pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, or PCP. a disease that many AIDS patients suffer from. What's scary about PCP is that we all carry the bacterium in our bodies from birth. Normally, our immune systems keep it in check, but if something wipes out our immune system, like HIV, PCP becomes deadly. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Goudsmith, Goud, Goudsmith looked back at medical records and found that just after World War II, there was an epidemic of PCP across parts of Europe, including the Netherlands and Germany. Thousands of small children died. These children were being treated in hospitals where tragically unsterilized needles were used over and over again, common medical practice at that time. In one Dutch town, 81 infants in a special hospital ward developed PCP between 1955 and 1958. 24 of them died. Goudsmit believes this was an early unknown HIV epidemic. The virus entered the hospital, perhaps through a single adult, possibly a coal miner from Poland or Czechoslovakia, and spread from child to child through shared medical equipment. Here is the strange part. Not all the children died. In fact, most survived. They somehow fought off the virus, and that tells us something extraordinary. The HIV virus of the 1950s, if it was indeed HIV, was a weaker version of the one that would tip in the 1980s. It was still contagious, but it was not deadly enough to stay in the body permanently. In other words, the virus itself evolved, the HIV virus changed, and when it became harder to fight off, when it became stickier, that's when the epidemic truly tipped. This brings us to one of the most important ideas in the tipping point, the stickiness factor. We usually think of stickiness in medical terms as how long a virus stays in the body. But stickiness also applies to ideas, products, messages, and behaviors. In a social epidemic, stickiness means that the message sticks in your mind, it makes an impact, it's unforgettable. Let's talk about one of the stickiest advertising slogans in history. In 1954, a cigarette company launched a new slogan: Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. Now that phrase breaks grammatical rules. It uses like instead of as, but that's exactly why it stood out. People noticed it, they argued about it, they repeated it. It was catchy, it stuck. Winston turned the slogan into a jingle for a radio and TV, and before long their cigarette brand skyrocketed to the top of the market. Within a few years, Winston was the best-selling cigarette brand in the United States. And even now, decades later, if you say Winston tastes good, many Americans can still complete the phrase like a cigarette should. That's stickiness. Or consider the famous Wendy's ad from 1984. Where is the beef? That line entered everyday conversation. People still quote it, it stuck. The stickiness factor tells us that in order for an idea, product, or message to tip into mass popularity, it has to be memorable, it has to stay with you. It's not enough to be catchy, the idea has to change behavior. If I tell you about a new product and you forget it tomorrow, it does not matter. But if the idea stays in your head, if it affects the way you think or act, then it has real power. This is the hard part of communication, making a message not just heard but remembered. There is psychological aspects to this too. The human brain is flooded with information every day. Most of it disappears, but a sticky message cuts through the noise. It lingers. It might be surprising or emotionally charged or just plain weird. But whatever the trick, it hacks into memory and stays there. So what does all this mean for us? Whether you are a business owner, a teacher, a parent, or just someone with an idea you want to spread, understanding the stickiness factor is crucial. You need to structure your message in a way that ensures people don't just hear it, they retain it. We often focus too much on how to make something go viral, how to reach the largest numbers of people. But reach alone is not enough. A message that's heard by millions and forgotten by tomorrow is no better than a message never sent. Instead, we should ask, how can I make this unforgettable? Stickiness Stickiness is the glue of epidemics, whether social, medical, or cultural. It explains why an unknown virus suddenly becomes deadly, why a neglected disease suddenly spreads, why an old brand suddenly tips into mass popularity, and why a simple phrase can change the course of history. So, the next time you come across something that spreads like wildfire, a trend, a meme, a piece of news, or even a slogan, ask yourself, is it contagious? Is it sticky? And what made it tip? Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown of the tipping point helpful, let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into human behavior, ideas, and what makes change happen, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious and remember, small things can make a big difference.